Doctor sat in her small office on the transport ship, staring at the screen in front of her. The blue light made her tired eyes hurt even more. She had been reading files about the for 6 hours straight. Her coffee was cold. Her back was sore. And she still could not believe what the Galactic Council was asking her to do. They were causing problems. Big problems. They were aliens who looked like large lizards, about 7 feet tall with scales that changed color when they got angry or excited. They were smart. Very smart. They built amazing technology and understood science better than most species in the galaxy. But they had one problem that was driving everyone crazy. They would not use bathrooms properly. They relieved themselves anywhere they wanted, in hallways, in corners, near workstations. It did not matter to them, and this was destroying the most important scientific project in the galaxy. The Joint Research Station orbiting 7 was supposed to bring together the beings from dozens of worlds. They were studying ancient alien technology that could change everything. But now, other species were threatening to leave because they could not stand the mess anymore. 3 different diplomatic teams had tried to fix the problem. All 3 had failed. 2 scientists who studied alien life had quit in frustration, and now the council had called. She was not a diplomat. She was a kindergarten teacher from Earth who had recently finished some training in teaching alien species. That was it. She taught 5-year-old humans how to share toys, eat their vegetables, and yes, use the bathroom properly. A message popped up on her screen. Commander wanted to meet her at the airlock when she arrived, sighed and closed the files. She stood up and stretched, feeling her joints pop. At 42 years old, she was too old for this kind of adventure. She should be planning her fall lesson plans, not flying through space to teach aliens about toilets. But the council had offered her a lot of money. More importantly, they had said something that caught her attention. They said humans might be able to help because humans were good at understanding behavior, had spent 20 years understanding why children did what they did. Maybe that would be enough. The transport ship docked at the research station 3 hours later, gathered her bags and walked through the connecting tunnel. The airlock door opened with a hiss, and she stepped into a world that was completely different from Earth. The station was huge. The corridor stretched out in both directions, curving up and out of sight. The walls were smooth metal that glowed with a soft white light. Aliens of different shapes and sizes walked past her. Some had fur. Some had scales. Some floated in the air inside special suits filled with liquid. It was like stepping into one of the science fiction movies she watched with her nephew. Commander was waiting for her. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and a serious face. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Human Diplomatic Corps. When he saw, he did not smile. "Doctor," he said, reaching out to shake her hand. "Welcome to Research Station 7. I wish I could say it under better circumstances." "Thank you, Commander," replied. She noticed he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Let me be direct with you," said as he led her down the corridor. "The Council expects you to fail. They have already drafted the orders to shut down this station. You have 72 hours, 3 days. If they are still causing contamination problems after that, everyone goes home. Decades of work wasted." "No pressure then," said. She tried to make it sound like a joke, but her voice shook a little. Stopped walking and turned to face her. "Doctor, I read your file. You are very good at what you do, but this is not a classroom full of human children. These are proud, intelligent aliens who think they are superior to most other species. They have already rejected every attempt to change their behavior. Why do you think you can succeed where trained diplomats failed?" Adjusted the bag on her shoulder. It was heavy. Inside were the tools she had brought from Earth: sticker charts, timers, small toys for rewards, things that probably seemed silly to the commander, but they were things that worked. "Commander," she said, "I once had a classroom of 37 5-year-olds. Half of them were the children of very important people, diplomats, politicians, rich business owners. These children had never been told no in their entire lives. Their parents gave them everything they wanted, and I had to potty train all of them in one summer. And asked. And I did it, every single one, because I learned that it does not matter if you are training a stubborn child or negotiating with a difficult adult. The rules are the same. Everyone needs to feel respected. Everyone needs to feel like they have control. And everyone needs to believe that the change is their idea, not yours. Stared at her for a moment. Then, for the first time, he smiled just a little. I hope you are right, Doctor, for all our sakes. They walked through more corridors until they reached a large door, pressed his hand against a panel, and the door slid open. Inside was a meeting room with a huge window that looked out into space. Stars filled the view, bright and endless. Sitting at the table was the biggest alien had ever seen. He was at least 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that reflected the light. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits like a snake. A long tail curled around the legs of his chair. This was Ambassador Al, the leader of the delegation. Another human comes to lecture us, Al said. His voice came from a small device attached to his throat that translated his words. This is amusing. Your species still uses primitive water systems to wash away waste. You are barely more advanced than animals, and yet you think you can teach us about proper behavior. Set down her bag and looked directly at the ambassador. She had dealt with hostile parents before, parents who thought they knew better than her, parents who thought teachers were beneath them. This was not different. Ambassador Al, she said calmly, I am not here to lecture you. I am here to solve a problem. And in 3 days, your entire delegation will be using the facilities properly. Not because I forced you, but because you will want to. The ambassador's scales shifted to a darker color. His tail moved faster. Impossible. We have our ways. We will not change. We will see, said. She smiled, but it was the smile she used when a child was being particularly difficult. It was patient and kind, but also firm. We will see. Commander showed to her quarters after the meeting. As she unpacked her things, she looked at the sticker charts and timers. They seemed so simple, so basic. Could they really work on aliens? She thought about tomorrow. She thought about the challenge ahead. And she thought about what her mentor had told her years ago when she first started teaching. Children are not problems to be solved. They are people to be understood. Maybe aliens were the same way. Set her alarm for early morning and went to bed. She had 72 hours to do the impossible, and she was going to need every minute. Woke up at 5 in the morning, which was early even by her standards. She got dressed in simple clothes, comfortable pants and a shirt, nothing fancy. She grabbed her tablet and a notebook. Old habits died hard. Even with all the technology around her, she still liked writing things down with a pen. Her assistant was waiting outside her door. Park was a young woman, maybe 25 years old, with bright eyes and nervous energy. She had just graduated from the program on Earth. This was her first real assignment, and she looked both excited and scared. Doctor said, almost bouncing on her feet. I have all the research files ready. There are 17 different reports from the previous teams. There are biological scans, psychological profiles, cultural studies, and detailed analysis of their waste elimination patterns. Where should we start? Smiled, we start by watching them. Watching them looked confused, but the research. I read all the research on the ship, said. Now I need to see the real thing, not what reports say they do, what they actually do. They walked through the station corridors. It was still early, so not many people were around. The station ran on a standard 24-hour cycle to make it easier for species who were used to day and night patterns. Some aliens never slept, but they respected the quiet hours anyway, and positioned themselves at a corner where they could see down a long hallway in the section. They did not hide, but they stayed quiet and still. Within an hour, started moving through the corridors, heading to their laboratories and workstations. The first incident happened at 6:30. A young scientist, his scales a lighter green than the ambassador's, walked down the hallway carrying data tablets. He looked around quickly, then moved to a corner where two walls met. He relieved himself there, quick and efficient, then walked away as if nothing had happened. Made a disgusted sound. See, they just do it anywhere, no shame at all. Said, keep watching. Over the next few hours, they saw it happen 6 more times, always in corners, always away from the main flow of traffic, always quickly. Wrote notes in her notebook, drawing little diagrams of where each incident occurred. At 9 o'clock, they went to the cafeteria for breakfast. The station had one large cafeteria where all species could eat, though different sections served food suitable for different biologies. Ate simple toast and drank coffee, while ate something that looked like eggs but was made from synthesized proteins. I do not understand, said. The previous teams tried everything. They put up signs. They gave lectures about hygiene. They even tried punishment, taking away laboratory privileges. Nothing worked. What can we possibly do differently? Pulled out her tablet and showed her notes. Look at the pattern. Every single incident was in a corner. Every single one was away from high-traffic areas. Every single one happened when fewer people were around. Does that seem random to you? No, admitted, but what does it mean? It means they are following rules, said. Not our rules, their rules. Before could ask more questions, a man approached their table. He was tall and thin, wearing the white coat of a scientist. He had kind eyes and messy hair that looked like he had forgotten to comb it. Doctor, I am Dr. Minu, the station. Commander said you might want to talk to me. Please sit down, said. I would love to hear your perspective. Minu sat down and placed his own tablet on the table. I have been studying for 2 years. The waste elimination issue has been a problem the entire time. May I show you something? He pulled up a file on his tablet. It showed a video of the landscape was rocky with red soil and strange purple plants. Moved through what looked like a city, but the buildings were low and spread far apart. On there, Minu explained, they evolved as territorial creatures. They are not social like humans. Each claims a territory, usually several acres. They mark the boundaries of their territory through waste placement. It is a chemical signal to others. It says, this is mine. Stay away unless invited. Leaned forward, fascinated. So when they relieve themselves here, they are trying to mark territory. Exactly, Minu said. But here is the important part. In their culture, eliminating waste in communal areas in places where everyone gathers is considered deeply shameful. It is like, imagine if humans were forced to use the bathroom in the middle of a crowded restaurant while everyone watched. That is how I feel about our communal facilities. Oh, said, her eyes widening. Oh no, so when they tried to shame them into using the bathrooms, they were asking them to do something that already felt shameful, Minu finished. And when they tried punishment, they were attacking dignity. Both approaches made the problem worse, not better. Sat back in her chair, thinking hard. Pieces were falling into place in her mind. She remembered a little boy in her class years ago had refused to use the bathroom at school. He would hold it all day until he got home. His parents had been frustrated. The school counselor had tried to help, but nothing worked until figured out the real problem was not being stubborn. He was afraid of the automatic flush toilets. They were too loud and scared him. Once they fixed that one thing, gave him a bathroom with a manual flush, the problem disappeared. So we are solving the wrong problem, said out loud. Everyone has been trying to force them to change their nature. But what if we do not need to change their nature? What if we just need to change how they see the facilities? What do you mean? Minu asked. Stood up excited now. An idea was forming, getting clearer and clearer. We need to make the bathrooms feel like private territory, not shared space, not communal areas where everyone goes, private, personal, theirs. She pulled up the station schematics on her tablet, looking at the layout of the sector. There were already bathrooms installed there, placed by the original station designers. But they were open, communal, designed like human public restrooms. "Can we modify these facilities?" asked Minyu. "Can we make them more private?" "With Commander's authorization, yes," Minyu said. "What are you thinking?" Started sketching on her tablet with her finger, drawing quick diagrams. "First, we need complete privacy. Floor-to-ceiling walls, doors that lock, no gaps, no way for anyone to see in or even know someone is inside unless they try the door." "That is easy enough," Minyu said. "Second, we need biometric locks, locks that only recognize biology, so other species cannot enter at all, make it exclusively their space." Was taking notes rapidly. "That could work. It makes the facilities literally their territory." "Third," continued, getting more excited, "we need to add something that makes each facility unique to individual, something that marks it as specifically theirs." "Scent markers," Minyu said suddenly. "Rely heavily on chemical communication. If we could synthesize their territorial markers, add a unique scent to each facility, they would recognize it as their own claimed space." "Can we do that?" asked. "Dr. Jinna Song in the biochemistry lab could probably synthesize something," Minyu said. "She is brilliant with alien biology. Give me an hour to talk to her." Felt hope for the first time since arriving at the station. This could work. It had to work. They spent the rest of the morning planning. Minyu went to talk to Dr. Song about the scent markers, contacted the maintenance crews about modifying the facilities, went to find Commander to get authorization for all these changes. Was in his office looking at reports. When explained her plan, he listened carefully without interrupting. "You want to give them private bathrooms with locks and scent markers," he said when she finished. "And you think this will work when everything else has failed?" "Commander, every other approach tried to force the to adapt to us," said. "This approach adapts to them. We are not changing their nature. We are giving them a way to express their nature that works for everyone." Thought for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You have my authorization. But doctor, remember, you only have 3 days if this does not work." "I know," said. "Everyone goes home." "Not just that," said quietly. "If this fails, it proves that some species simply cannot coexist. It sets back galactic cooperation by decades. No pressure." Smiled, but her hands were shaking slightly. No pressure at all. She left his office and went back to meet and Minyu. They had work to do, and only 60 hours left. Day 1 started at 6 in the morning. Had barely slept, her mind too busy planning every detail. The maintenance crews had worked through the night, and now it was time to see if the modifications would make any difference. The 12 bathrooms in the sector had been completely transformed. Walked through each one with, checking every detail. The walls now went from floor to ceiling with no gaps. The doors were solid and thick, with sophisticated biometric locks that would only open for hand patterns. Inside, each facility was spacious, clean, and most importantly, completely private. Dr. Jinna Song had worked miracles in the biochemistry lab. She was a small woman with quick hands and sharp eyes that never seemed to stop moving. She had analyzed territorial markers and created synthetic versions that would not offend the aliens but would trigger their natural responses. "Each bathroom has a unique scent signature," Jinna explained, holding up small devices that looked like air fresheners. "They release pheromones that will register to senses as territory markers. To us, it smells like nothing. To them, it should feel like walking into a space that already belongs to them." "You are brilliant," said, meaning it. Jinna blushed. "I just followed the chemical patterns. You are the one who had the idea." At 7 o'clock, they began their daily routines. Ambassador Al was the first to notice the changes, watched from a discreet distance as he approached one of the modified facilities. His movements slowed, his head tilted. His tail, which had been swishing aggressively, gradually lowered to a more neutral position. He pressed his hand against the biometric panel. The door opened. He stepped inside and the door closed behind him. Grip's arm. He went in. He actually went inside. Wait, said, just wait. 3 minutes later, the door opened again. Al emerged. His scales had shifted to a lighter, more relaxed color. He stood there for a moment, seeming to think about what had just happened. Then he walked away without saying anything. One down, Minyu said, appearing beside them with his tablet full of monitoring data. Let us see if others follow. Throughout the morning, more investigated the facilities. Some went inside out of curiosity. Some ignored them completely and continued with their old habits. Had expected this. Change never happened instantly, especially with proud, intelligent creatures who felt they were being pushed around. Now came the harder part, Phase 2. Had brought a programmer to help with the next step. Lee was a young man who specialized in alien interface design. He had spent the morning creating an application for personal devices. Okay, said, showing his work on a large screen. I have integrated it with their existing communication systems. Every time a uses one of the designated facilities, the system logs it and awards status points. The points are visible on a that all can see. But we cannot make it feel like a training program, stressed. It has to feel like something they want to do. Right, said. So I framed it as territorial maintenance. The language says they are successfully maintaining territorial claims. The more consistently they use their assigned facility, the higher their territorial efficiency score. Looked at the wording carefully. It was perfect, competitive, status-based, framed entirely in language that appealed to values of territory and hierarchy. Send it out, she said. The application went live at noon. Within an hour, the first checked his status after using a facility. His score appeared on the other saw this, and the competitive nature that made them such good scientists kicked in immediately. A junior researcher saw that a colleague had earned points. Not wanting to be outdone, he tried one of the facilities. His score appeared, then another tried, then another. By evening of day 1, facility usage had jumped to 40%. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Real progress. Was almost dancing with excitement. It is working. Doctor, it is actually working. Do not celebrate yet, warned. The senior are still resisting, including the ambassador. If the leadership does not adopt this, the junior members will eventually give up. Day 2 began with new challenges. The junior were enthusiastically using the facilities and competing for high scores. But the senior, including Al, were holding out. They saw the behavior of the younger ones but did not join in. Knew why? Status. Pride. The senior would not follow what the juniors were doing. That would suggest the juniors were leading, which would be a loss of face. She needed to change the dynamic. We need to make this about recognition, not training, she told Minyu over lunch in her quarters. The seniors will not follow the juniors, but they will respond to status and honor. How do we give them that? Asked. Thought about award ceremonies at schools. About how even the most difficult parents would soften when their child received recognition. About how everyone, human or alien, wanted to feel valued. We need to make this official, she said. Not a program, not a system, a recognition of something they have achieved. She contacted Commander. I need you to organize a formal ceremony. Tomorrow morning, all species representatives should be there. A ceremony for what? Asked. For honoring the territorial system as a model for the entire station, said. I need the other species to praise what they are doing. Make it seem like they have innovated something impressive. Was quiet for a moment, then he laughed. You are going to make them think this was their idea all along. Exactly. Contacted the other ambassadors. To his surprise, most of them agreed immediately. The who were usually very strict about rules said they would be happy to attend. Despite their earlier attempts at punishment, said they had learned from their mistakes and wanted to support this new approach. Added one more element to day 2, timers with gentle reminders. She programmed them to send messages to devices, but the messages were carefully worded. They did not tell the when to use the facilities. Instead, they suggested optimal times for territorial maintenance based on each individual's schedule and biology. Your territorial maintenance window is optimal in 15 minutes was very different from, you should use the bathroom now. They responded to this much better. It was information, not commands. It was helping them be efficient, not controlling them. By the end of day 2, facility usage was at 75%, but the senior, including Al, still had not fully committed. Everything depended on day 3. Day 3, the final day. The ceremony was scheduled for 10 in the morning in the main conference hall. Woke up early, more nervous than she had been in years. Everything came down to this. She dressed carefully, choosing formal clothes that showed respect for the occasion. Met her outside the conference hall, looking equally nervous. "What if this does not work?" whispered. "What if the ambassador refuses?" "Then we tried our best," said, but inside her stomach was churning. The conference hall was impressive. It was a large circular room with the same view of space that the meeting room had. Representatives from all the major species sat in their designated areas. The delegation, small furry creatures with 6 legs, sat in raised platforms. The who looked like floating jellyfish in liquid-filled suits hovered in their section. The tall and thin with silver skin stood in their area. And there were there, all 23 members of their delegation, including Ambassador Al. Commander stood at the center podium. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the translator system so every species could understand. "We are gathered today to recognize an achievement in cross-cultural cooperation. The delegation has successfully implemented a territorial system that respects both their biological needs and the needs of the station community. This system serves as a model for how different species can maintain their cultural identity while contributing to shared goals." The ambassador stood up, which for them meant rising on their hind legs. The people acknowledged the innovation. "We have learned from their example. Territory and privacy are important values that we previously underestimated." The ambassador spoke next, their voice bubbling through their translator. "They recognize that our previous approach was flawed. They have shown us that cooperation does not mean abandoning one's nature. It means finding bridges between different natures." Watched Al carefully. His scales were shifting through colors. His tail was very still. He was listening, really listening. Then stepped forward. Commander had given her this moment. She held a ceremonial marker, a beautiful piece of metalwork created by the station's artisans. It was designed to be scanned at each facility, serving as a key and a symbol of authority. "Ambassador Al," said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "On behalf of the Galactic Council and all species represented here, I present you with this marker. Your delegation has established the most efficient territorial system on this station. You have shown that respecting biological nature and social cooperation are not opposites. They can work together." She held out the marker. For a long moment, Al did not move. Every being in the room seemed to hold their breath. Then the ambassador stood. He walked forward, his full height impressive and dignified. He took the marker from his hands. His scales shifted to a bright, proud green. "They accept this recognition," he said, his translated voice clear. "We have shown the galaxy that our methods, when properly understood, are not primitive. They are sophisticated, they are efficient, and they are ours." The room erupted in applause, each species making their own version of approval sounds. Felt relief wash over her so strongly that her knees almost gave out. It had worked. Against all odds, it had actually worked. By hour 68 of the 72-hour deadline, the contamination incidents had dropped to 0. Completely 0. Checked the monitoring systems 3 times to make sure the data was correct. It was. Every single was now using the designated facilities. More than that, they were taking pride in doing so. When walked through the sector, she saw something she had not expected. They had begun adding their own decorations to the facilities. Small carvings on the door frames, colored stones arranged in patterns near the entrances. These were traditional territorial markers from there. They were making the spaces truly their own. Found in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The young woman was carrying a data pad and smiling so wide her face must have hurt. "Doctor, you need to see this," said, practically bouncing. "The other species are requesting meetings with you. They want to talk about implementing a similar system for their facilities. They are asking about privacy modifications. Even the who never complain about anything are interested." "Slow down," said, smiling. "What are you talking about?" Pulled up her data pad and showed the requests. There were 7 different formal requests for consultation. They were first in line. "They are very sensitive to light and sound," explained. "The current facilities have bright lights and make noise from the air circulation systems. They use them because they have to, but apparently it causes them stress. They want to know if you could help design facilities that meet their needs better." Took the data pad and scrolled through the requests. Each species had their own concerns. The needed facilities with different height accommodations. The needed temperature control. Species she had never even heard of were asking for help. "This is bigger than I thought," said quietly. The next morning had her first meeting with the ambassador. They communicated through color changes in their bodies and sound vibrations, which the translator turned into spoken words. The ambassador glowed with soft blue colors as they spoke. "Doctor, your solution for the has opened our eyes," the ambassador said. "We have been using facilities designed for human comfort. We assumed we simply had to adapt, but your approach showed us that adaptation can go both ways. We do not have to suffer in silence. We can ask for changes that respect our nature." "Tell me about what causes you stress," said, pulling out her notebook. "Old habits." They explained that their species evolved in deep ocean environments where light was dim and everything was quiet. The bright lights and mechanical noises of the standard facilities felt harsh and aggressive to them. Some had started avoiding the facilities because of the discomfort, which was causing health problems. "We need dim, soft lighting," the ambassador said, "and silence, or at least much quieter systems." Took notes and asked questions. It was exactly like talking to parents about their children's needs. What specific things cause problems? What would make it better? What is absolutely necessary versus what would just be nice to have? Within a week, found herself consulting for 7 different species. Each meeting revealed new information about how different beings experience the same spaces in completely different ways. What seemed like simple facilities to humans were complex sensory environments for aliens with different biologies. She worked with Dr. Jinnah Song on environmental modifications, with Lee on interface designs that worked for different types of beings, with the maintenance crews on structural changes. It was exhausting but fascinating work. Commander found her one evening in the cafeteria, eating a late dinner alone. She was surrounded by data pads and notebooks, barely tasting her food as she reviewed designs. "Doctor said, sitting down across from her, the council has been reviewing your work." Looked up, suddenly worried. "Is something wrong?" "Wrong? No," smiled. "They want to offer you a permanent position as the station's integration specialist. The pay is triple what you make as a teacher, full benefits, your own research budget. You would be pioneering an entirely new field." Set down her fork. That is an incredible offer." "But," said, reading her expression. "But I have 30 new kindergartners starting in September back on Earth," said. "I promised their parents I would be their teacher. And honestly, Commander, I love teaching children. I love seeing them learn and grow. This has been amazing, but it is not my life. Nodded slowly. I understand, but would you consider consulting remotely? The council is willing to be flexible. You could stay on Earth and help with situations as they arise. That I could do, said, feeling relieved. Yes, I would be happy to consult. Good, said, because I think this is just the beginning. Word is spreading through the galactic community about what happened here. Other stations are already asking for help with their own integration problems. He was right. Over the next few weeks, received requests from stations across 3 sectors. Some had issues similar to the situation. Others had completely different problems, but they all had the same root cause: species trying to force each other to change instead of finding ways to respect each other's natures. The most surprising development came from the academic community. Dr. Minu was writing a paper about the solution, which he insisted on calling the protocols despite protests. You cannot name a scientific approach after me, said when he showed her the draft. I am just a kindergarten teacher. You are the person who solved a problem that defeated trained, Minu replied. You deserve the recognition. More importantly, the field needs to acknowledge that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. The paper was published in the Galactic Journal of. It caused an immediate response. Some academics praised it as revolutionary. Others criticized it as too simple, saying that complex problems required complex solutions. But the stations that implemented the approach saw results. Conflicts that had lasted for years resolved in days or weeks. Species that had refused to work together found ways to coexist. Came to visit in her quarters one evening, carrying a bottle of something that looked like wine but was made from alien fruits. We need to celebrate, said. Do you know what happened today? What? Asked, accepting a glass of the strange wine. Ambassador Al spoke at the council meeting. He defended the protocols to a group of traditional leaders who thought he had betrayed their culture by adapting to alien ways. Was grinning. He told them that true strength is not refusing to change. True strength is changing in ways that honor your nature while respecting others. He said you taught him that. Felt her eyes getting wet. She blinked rapidly, surprised by the emotion. He said that. He did, and then he said something else. He said his mate is expecting their first clutch of eggs, and when they hatch, he wants to ask you for parenting advice. Laughed, wiping her eyes. An alien asking a human kindergarten teacher for parenting advice. That is something I never expected. They drank the alien wine, which tasted like sweet berries mixed with something could not identify. It was good. Strange, but good. Doctor said after a while, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you know it would work? Everyone else failed. What made you so confident? Thought about that question. I was not confident, she admitted. I was terrified, but I have learned something in 20 years of teaching. People, human or alien, are not that different when it comes to basic needs. Everyone needs to feel respected. Everyone needs to feel like they have control over their own choices. Everyone needs dignity. But how do you teach that to others? Asked. How do I learn to do what you do? You watch, you listen. And you remember that behavior is not the same as intelligence or worth, said. A child who will not use the bathroom is not a bad child. They are a child with a reason. An alien who will not follow rules is not a primitive species. They are a species with their own logic. Your job is not to judge. Your job is to understand. Nodded slowly, taking notes on her data pad even though this was a casual conversation. Understand first, then find solutions that honor what you understand. Exactly, said. The next day, prepared to return to Earth. Her 72-hour assignment had turned into 3 weeks, and she needed to get back to prepare for the new school year. Her quarters were packed. Her notebooks were full of new ideas and observations. Commander came to see her off at the transport dock. The station is not going to be the same without you, he said. You will do fine, said. You have and mean you. You have systems in place, and you have my contact information if you need help. The Council wants me to tell you something, said. Because of what you did here, humanity's status in the Galactic Union has increased significantly. Earth is now being considered for leadership positions in cultural integration departments across the galaxy. Because I potty trained some aliens, said, shaking her head in disbelief. Because you proved that humans have something valuable to offer, corrected. You proved that sometimes the best solutions are not the most complicated ones. Sometimes they are the kindest ones. Boarded the transport ship, settled into her seat, and looked out the window at the research station growing smaller in the distance. She had come here expecting to fail. She had succeeded in ways she never imagined. But she was ready to go home, ready to get back to her classroom, ready to teach children how to share and be kind and, yes, how to use the bathroom properly. Because whether you were teaching 5-year-old humans or 7-foot alien scientists, the principles were the same. Respect, understanding, patience, and lots of sticker charts. 6 months passed, was back in her classroom on Earth, surrounded by 5-year-olds who had endless energy and endless questions. She loved every minute of it. The sticky fingers, the crayon drawings, the way children saw the world with wonder and honesty. This was where she belonged. But the galaxy had not forgotten her. Her inbox was constantly full of messages from research stations, diplomatic missions, and academic institutions. The protocols were being taught at universities across multiple worlds. Her 3-day solution had become the foundation for an entirely new field of study called integration. It still felt strange, too. She had just applied basic kindergarten teaching methods to aliens. That was all. But apparently, no one else had thought to try that approach. On a Friday afternoon, as her students were getting ready to go home, received a message from Commander. It was a video call request. She waited until all the children had been picked up by their parents, cleaned up her classroom, and then accepted the call. His face appeared on her screen. He was smiling. "Doctor, I have news. The Galactic Institute of Cross-Cultural Integration has formally opened, and they want you to give the opening lecture." Me said, "I am not a professor, I am not even a—" "That is exactly why they want you," replied. "They want the person who actually solved the problem, not just the people who write papers about solutions. Will you come?" Thought about her students. It was Friday. If she left tomorrow, she could be back by Tuesday. Her substitute teacher, Mrs., was excellent and the children loved her. "Okay," said, "I will come." The Galactic Institute was located on the same research station where everything had started, but when arrived, she barely recognized the place. Where there had been tension and frustration before, now there was cooperation and even friendship between species. The N were working together on a physics project. The N were sharing a laboratory. And the bathrooms. Each species now had facilities designed specifically for their needs. They were clean, well-maintained, and used without conflict. The lecture hall was enormous. Stood backstage, peeking through the curtain at the audience. There had to be 300 beings out there, students from 17 different species, faculty members, diplomats, researchers, and sitting in the front row, looking proud and dignified, was Ambassador Al. "Nervous?" asked. She had been promoted to Assistant Director of Cultural Integration at the Institute. She looked professional and confident, so different from the anxious young woman had first met. "Terrified," admitted. "I teach 5-year-olds, not university students." "Just pretend they are 5-year-olds," suggested with a grin. "Some of them act like it anyway." The lights dimmed. Someone introduced with a long list of titles and achievements that made her sound much more impressive than she felt. Then she walked onto the stage, squinting in the bright lights, and looked out at all those faces. And scales. And tentacles. "Hello," she said simply. "My name is, I am a kindergarten teacher from Earth. 6 months ago, I was asked to solve a problem that had defeated diplomats and scientists. And I did solve it, but not because I am smarter than those diplomats and scientists. I solved it because I approached it differently. She pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. It showed pictures of her classroom. Children playing, children learning, children growing. For 20 years, I have been teaching children how to exist in a society, how to share, how to respect others, how to control their impulses and make good choices. And I have learned that children are not problems to be fixed. They are people to be understood. She clicked to the next slide, showing data from the situation. When I arrived at this station, everyone was focused on the behavior. They saw waste in the hallways and thought the problem was the waste. But that was just a symptom. The real problem was that two different cultural logics were clashing, and no one had bothered to understand both sides. Spent the next hour explaining her methodology. Observe without judgment. Understand the cultural logic behind the behavior. Find the common ground between different needs. Frame change as an extension of existing values rather than a rejection of them. The goal is not to make one species act like another species, she said. The goal is to find ways for different species to coexist while maintaining their identities. That requires creativity, patience, and most importantly, respect. During the question period, a young student raised a tentacle. "Doctor, your methods seem very simple. Why did no one try them before?" "Because simple does not mean easy," replied. "It is simple to say respect others. It is much harder to actually do it, especially when their behavior seems wrong or strange to you. It requires you to set aside your assumptions and really listen. That is hard work." A professor asked, "But how do you scale this approach? You cannot personally solve every cultural conflict in the galaxy." "You are right," agreed. "But I do not need to. What I can do is teach others the approach. That is why this institute exists. We are not training people to copy my solutions. We are training people to think the way I think, to approach cultural conflicts with curiosity instead of judgment, to look for the logic behind the behavior instead of just trying to change the behavior." Ambassador Al stood up. The room went quiet. When a stood during a discussion, it was a sign of great importance. "Doctor taught me something I did not expect to learn," Al said, his translator rendering his words clearly. "She taught me that adaptation is not surrender. When she created the private facilities for my people, she did not ask us to become less. She gave us a way to be fully while also being part of this community. That is not weakness. That is wisdom." He paused, his scales shifting through colors that indicated deep emotion. "She also taught me something about my own pride. I thought accepting help from a soft skin, from a species younger and less advanced than mine, would be shameful. But I learned that wisdom can come from anywhere. The human saying is correct, out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes the youngest, the smallest among us can teach the greatest lessons." The room erupted in applause. Multiple species making their own approval sounds created a strange but beautiful symphony. After the lecture, was surrounded by students asking questions. A young wanted to know about specific techniques for observing behavior. A was interested in how to handle conflicts between 3 or more species at once. A being from a species had never met wanted advice about a situation on their home station. She answered as many questions as she could, but eventually rescued her, leading her to a quiet reception room where refreshments were waiting. "You were amazing," said, handing a cup of earth coffee that someone had thoughtfully provided. "Did you see their faces? They were absorbing every word." "I just talked about my job," said, sipping the coffee gratefully. "Teaching is teaching, whether the students are human children or alien adults." Dr. Minyu entered the room, followed by Dr. Jinna Song and Lee, the team that had helped make the original solution work. "The Institute Board wants to formalize a consulting program," Minyu said. "They want to create a network of cultural integration specialists who can respond to situations as they arise, and they want you to help train them. I can do remote training, said. Between semesters, maybe some weekend sessions, but I need to stay on Earth with my students during the school year. We understand, Jenna said, but you need to see what you have created. This is not just about bathrooms anymore. Stations that were days away from shutting down due to cultural conflicts are now thriving. Species that refuse to work together are collaborating on research that could change the galaxy. And it all started because you saw these as people with valid reasons for their behavior instead of as problems to be solved. Commander arrived, looking official in his formal uniform. Doctor, I have been authorized by the Galactic Council to present you with something. He handed her a small box. Inside was a medal, beautifully crafted from an alloy that seemed to shift colors in the light. It had symbols from dozens of species engraved on it. This is the Galactic Medal of Cultural Service, said formally. It has only been awarded 7 times in the history of the Galactic Union. You are the 8th recipient and the first human. Stared at the medal, overwhelmed. I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything, said, smiling. You already did the work. That evening found herself in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Al approached her, moving with the careful dignity that was natural to his species. Doctor, I wanted to speak with you privately, he said. Of course, Ambassador replied. My spawn mate's eggs have hatched, Al said. 3 healthy younglings. They are curious and energetic and completely exhausting. Smiled, congratulations. That sounds wonderful. I wanted to ask your advice, Al continued. On there, younglings are raised with strict hierarchy and discipline. But here on this station, they will grow up around many species with different approaches to child rearing. I want them to be proud, but I also want them to be open to others. How do I balance this? Thought about the question. It was the same question human parents asked her all the time. How do I raise my child to be strong and confident while also being kind and flexible? Ambassador, teach them that their nature is something to be proud of, said. Teach them the traditions and values of your people, but also teach them that other species have their own valid traditions and values. Show them that being confident in who you are does not require putting others down. The strongest beings are those who are secure enough in themselves to respect others. Al's scales shifted to a warm green color. You make it sound simple. It is simple, said. But like I told the students today, simple does not mean easy. Parenting is the hardest work in the universe, no matter what species you are, but it is also the most important. Would you consent to meet my younglings? Al asked. I would like them to know the being who helped their sire understand that wisdom comes in many forms. I would be honored, said, genuinely touched. The next day, before she left to return to Earth, visited Al's family quarters. The 3 younglings were about the size of house cats, with soft scales and enormous eyes full of curiosity. They climbed on everything, made chirping sounds, and reminded very much of energetic kindergartners. She showed Al some basic positive reinforcement techniques. She explained how consistent routines helped younglings feel secure. She talked about the importance of play and learning. Al took notes on a data pad, asking questions that showed how much he cared about being a good parent. As prepared to leave, one of the younglings climbed onto her lap and fell asleep. She gently handed the sleeping creature to Al. You are going to be a great father, she said. Because of what you taught me, Al replied. Thank you, Doctor, for everything. On the transport ship back to Earth, looked through the messages on her tablet. There were consultation requests from 12 different stations. There were invitations to speak at conferences. There were interview requests from galactic news networks. But there was also a video message from her kindergarten class. Mrs. had helped them record it. 30 little faces filled the screen, shouting, "We miss you, Ms.," and holding up drawings they had made for her. Smiled, feeling her heart warm. This was why she did what she did. Whether teaching human children or advising alien ambassadors, it all came down to the same thing: helping beings understand each other, helping them grow, helping them be their best selves while respecting others. As Earth came into view, beautiful and blue against the darkness of space, thought about the journey she had been on. She had gone to space to solve an impossible problem. She had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. She had helped create a new field of study and changed how species interacted across the galaxy. But she was going home, back to her classroom, back to sticky fingers and crayon drawings, back to teaching the most important lessons she knew. Be kind, be patient, respect others, and yes, use the bathroom properly. Because in the end, whether you were 5 years old or 500, whether you were human or any other species in the galaxy, those lessons mattered. They always would. Kindergarten teacher closed her eyes and smiled. She was ready to go back to work.